You're listening to the Entrepreneur to Author podcast, episode number 25.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur to Author podcast, the podcast that brings you practical strategies for building authority and growing your business. And now, here's your host, Scott McMillan.
Demand generation. It's the lifeblood of any business. Regardless of size, if you've got more demand than you can serve, you're in good shape. If not, I bet your business struggles. It's what drives so much of what we do as entrepreneurs. It's why we market ourselves. It's why we try to get featured in media. It's why we seek product market fit and problem solution fit. It's why we write books. For many entrepreneurs, the supply side of the equation is all about capacity. Your time, your team's time. But for today's guest, he's got more to worry about when balancing supply and demand. He's got physical product to manufacture, and he needs to ship it on a truck to his customers. This doesn't sound like the kind of business we've been talking about on this show, does it? It doesn't sound like the sort of business that would include a book as part of its demand generation strategy. But it is. We're going to learn about the role his book plays in his business. We'll learn about the national primetime media he's been featured on, and a whole lot more, in this packed edition of Entrepreneur to Author. My guest today is David Fraser. David's the founder of Bunkie Life and the author of Bunkie Life Extra Space. Bunkie Life sells small, inexpensive log cabins that you can put together over a weekend without needing a permit, which can provide much-needed extra space on your property or at the cottage for meaningful connection with your family and friends. And you know what? They make a great, quiet spot to get away and write a manuscript, too. David, welcome to the pod. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me.
To start, can you tell our listeners a little bit about your journey as an entrepreneur and why you started Bunkie Life?
Sure. So it depends on how far back you want to zoom, but I've been an entrepreneur since really my early 20s. So I graduated from university, realized pretty quickly that, teaching physics and math was not going to be my life's trajectory. And at the same time, I was performing, traveling around, playing music in pubs. So that was kind of my full-time living for about 10 years. That spun off into a wedding entertainment company when I had my first kid. And then for us, we live in the country, and we had our first child, and it was like, where are we going to put my in-laws? We ran out of bedrooms. And so my mom started sending me these angry texts about not wanting to sleep on the couch, accompanied with, here's a yurt, here's a link to buying a tiny home, here's, all these little creative solutions that she could still come and get a comfortable night's sleep and see the grandkids. And so 2015, we built our very first bunkie up on the kind of backyard of our property. And it was instantly rented on Airbnb. I'm kind of entrepreneurial, so I had it rented on Airbnb while I was finishing it up. And just the response was huge. So we started to we bought a bunch more, built a bunch more, and scaled it up renting-wise. And then the next progression was, hey, Dave, get me a bunkie. I want you to build me one. And so it kind of spiraled from there. And that's more or less how we got into the bunkie game.
Yeah, amazing. Well, let's talk a little bit about the bunkies themselves. So we've got a bunkie up at our cottage, and so I totally get how great they are. But for those who are maybe new to the whole concept, what are some of the reasons why somebody might consider getting one?
Yeah. Okay, great question. So first of all, what is a bunkie? I think that's probably a good question to get into. So What it is basically, the etymology originates here in Ontario. It's the short form for a bunkhouse, which is kind of like this, glorified shed that you put in your backyard that might have a bedroom, a couple of beds, maybe a bunk bed, that sort of thing. And it's basically as overflow for your house or your cottage. In most cases, it's the cottage. Different use cases are obviously just throw a couple of kids or parents or whoever you're trying to separate back there for the night. Sometimes it's more just like a sitting area that you'll go out and hang out, and maybe nobody even sleeps in there. Maybe it's a shed. I mean, there are kind of like shed use cases as well, but our bunkies especially are kind of fancier versions of a shed. So it's a glamour shed, to say the least. Some people are using it for home offices now. If you're been forced to work from home, or just you need an extra little gap between you and the day-to-day family life, you can get that with a bunkie very easily. And then there's other kind of more niche use cases. Like some people are using their bunkies for art studios, silversmithing, yoga studios, different aspects of that. So there's a whole wide range, and a lot of people just like me bought a bunkie and they started renting it out on Airbnb. So all the above are options for it. But basically, if you think of it as like a kind of a medium-ish small bedroom in your backyard, that's a good idea of what a bunkie framework can look like in your mind.
Yeah, I really like that idea of the office use space, because in my mind, I always think of a bunkhouse as a bunkie as something, in a rural area, right? Whether it's the cottage or a space with a huge property. But I know some of your clients actually have a bunkie in the city, don't they?
Oh yeah, we've installed them in Scarborough, a lot of Kitchener, Waterloo. I mean, they work. The ones that fit best in the rural kind of Muskoka kind of like cottage properties, they tend to be a little bit larger, but you can squeeze a smaller bunkie into most backyards.
What's the footprint?
So we've niched really specifically 10 square meters or less. Here in Ontario, BC, a bunch of other provinces as well. If you're under 10 square meters, you're technically not a building yet, so you don't need a permit. And you'd be very excited. You'd be shocked to see how excited people are. They don't have to interact with the building department. You can just put it up and go. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet that's a huge benefit. Okay, let's talk about the book, Bunkie Life Extra Space. So published in late 2020, it's a gorgeous coffee table style book with beautiful pictures of bunkies, stories from proud owners, and a narrative that runs through it, telling your family story and the origin of Bunkie Life. Mm. It's quite unique, I think, compared to traditional paperbacks that most entrepreneurs would publish. So can you talk a little bit about what you wanted to accomplish with the book and how you approached it?
Yeah, so a big part of it was I knew I needed to get something out there to kind of differentiate ourselves from the rest of the kind of generic shed space. So I thought that a book would have a really nice, explanation of what we're all about, first and foremost, our vision and our values. And then I thought it'd also be a really great thing that I can see getting passed around. And I was inspired by another book that a lot of our clients are already buying. I was actually looking into purchasing bulk quantities of this book and then selling it with the bunkies or giving it away with the bunkies, because it's just basically this like gorgeous coffee table book of cool cabins. And I thought, well, I mean, there's no reason that we couldn't create our own with bunkies. Bunkies have the same aesthetic appeal, the same homey kind of-ness. And then I thought, if I'm going to go to the trouble of creating this coffee table book, why not weave in some how-to and our story and our values? So it's kind of those two things kind of coming from either ends that I thought would make a lot of sense. And, we have, because of our nature of our business, we are always looking for ways to surprise and delight our clients. It's one of our three mottos. And so the book I thought would be, at the very least, a cool thing to surprise somebody with. So unlike an entrepreneurial like kind of lead generation, well, we do generate leads with it, but something that's like a lost leader, we said, let's just break the bank. Let's just make it full color. Let's make it like a tangible thing that you can kind of pass around. And let's spend a little bit of money, and then the book will kind of stand alone as opposed to just being, just something you kind of give away within the business. So we went with full color and a bunch of other kind of more costly decisions on the actual printing of the book. But the upside of that is the book kind of is worth the stamp.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. So let's fast forward for a little bit. A big reason that entrepreneurs write a book is, of course, to build their presence and hopefully get some media attention and opportunities from it. But of course, media attention feeds on itself as well.
Yeah.
In 2021, you got some pretty incredible media in the form of an appearance on Dragon's Den. Can you talk about how did you manage to get on the show and what was the experience like?
Yeah, so as part of our big promotions we do every year, we give a bunkie away. And so we found out that one of the producers of the show was a fan. She had been entering our contest for a few years to try to win a bunkie. And so she reached out and said, hey, have you ever considered trying out for the show? So I thought, it's on the back burner, but it was kind of thing 21 on a 20 to-do list. So, kind of moved it up. We had auditioned. This is the year of COVID, right? So, or the second year of COVID, I should say. And so it was most of the audition process was online. And so we were able to do that. And then we got invited to film the show, which we did last May. And it was quite the experience. It was something we had to keep under wraps for about 7 months because the episode didn't air until the final episode of 2021. So it was December 2021 it actually got out there. So we had to kind of keep it hush-hush until then, which was kind of fun.
Yeah, we'll try to put a link to the episode if it's available in the show notes. But maybe for those who haven't seen it, can you share what the result was now that it's aired?
Yeah, sure. So we went on the show. I think they did a really good job editing the stupid things I said out and only leaving in the things that made me look good. So I think it was a pretty good showing overall for us. We got most of our pitch, the key points of our pitch didn't get edited out. We got the dragons down to help build a couple of the dragons to kind of build a little makeshift kit that we had there. We had a full, I think it was the biggest thing I've ever built in the CBC studio there. We built this 16-foot thing. We wheeled it in this ginormous door, and it was just this. It fit by just this much, and there's a smoke detector. We're like, is it going to take out the smoke detector while it goes through this big door? So we wheeled it in, filmed, and then wheeled it out and tore it back down, which was all in a day. And so basically, we did our pitch. Everyone seemed pretty keen. They said the dragons were kind of talking amongst themselves. They said, "Hey, can you guys leave the room?" So we had to go into this little soundproof booth, which is normally where you go when you like want to phone a friend. But it was kind of the opposite. I was like, why don't you guys talk about this? I'll go back and right. So, and we knew our numbers pretty well going into it, and we knew what we were willing to to do. So I think before I even went in the soundproof room, I'd said, this is basically the best we can do in terms of pricing and stuff. So what ended up conspiring is we settled on a $1 million investment for 20% of the company. It was kind of the deal that we made, and I think it was a win for everyone. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it was a 5-dragon deal, wasn't it?
It was. Everybody ended up coming in on it, so that was nice.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, I've been watching that show since pretty much since it started airing. I don't even know how long ago, and so it's really really cool to see you on there. Congratulations on that. So from our conversations, and you alluded to it a little bit, social media has played an important role, I think, in growing the business, particularly around the Bunkie contest, and it's a bit of a perennial hit with your audience, and seems to drive a lot of interest and engagement. Can you talk a little bit about maybe your social media strategy broadly, and about how the contest fits into that for driving demand?
Yeah, sure. So the contest is like it's like our kind of our Super Bowl. We call it the Super Bowl within our company, our team members, and it's just this very big hypey kind of fun thing. So every year we iterate it a little bit more, and we try to add more of ourselves and our personality into it. So, like for the example, this year you enter this contest to win a Bunkie. Basically, maybe you're watching, scrolling your Instagram feed and you enter it. But then we want to really grab people and get them kind of doing things. So, there's things like watching live streams. So I'll put on a bunch of live streams, and it's very interactive. We'll do things like go and do a 3D tour of the Bunkie and find the secret word that we hid under the pillow, like little things like that, that just make it a little bit more of an experience. So we really have gone really above and beyond, or not above and beyond, but we've basically really tried to create an experience where you enter this contest, and if you want to, there's a lot you can do to participate, and you're incentivized to participate by, if you do certain actions, it'll give you more chances to win the Bunkie. And so every year it's kind of gotten bigger and bigger. And we kind of supplement that with just a really steady, every Saturday we post the rest of the year. And we'll do other little sales and other things as the year ebbs and flows. But we're able to kind of get enough of a momentum from that contest, enough of an email list that, if I send an email, I can reach 100,000 people right in our target market. So it's really good to really kind of gather the hens for the year, and then you see who ends up coming to roost throughout the season, essentially.
Yeah, fantastic. And so great that there's such a direct connection between what you're offering in the market and that contest. Because what I've often seen when people are doing contests is the prizing is fantastic, but it attracts all the wrong people. And what you're doing is amazing, right? It's the perfect fit.
Yeah, it's always weird. It's like, say I'm a lawyer, I'm giving away an iPad. It's like, what? I don't get how that works, right? Like it's trickier for certain businesses. I think that because we're a B2C primary, like about 85% of our business is selling directly to the end user. Our clients are our people. It works really well. The giveaway strategy, just give away what you're trying to sell everybody, right? And so you're hyping them up on this giveaway, and then they go, "Oh, I didn't win, but maybe I'll buy it instead." It's just trickier if you're selling if you're selling, I don't know, certain services, or like more kind of really niche services. It's trickier because not everyone's going to need that, Brazilian wax or whatever it is. But you're trying to reach. For us, it's a really good match. It's just like we know our market, we know who they are. they want a bunkie. Let's give a bunkie away, and let's start chatting.
Yeah, amazing. So much of what we talked about has been on the demand side, right? How to get people interested in bunkies, get the word out. But there's always the supply side of the equation, right? In our business,
Yes,
capacity is what that's about, right? The time for editors and designers. But especially in businesses with physical products like yours, it's a whole different dynamic. How do you balance it?
as well as we can, Scott. I mean, that's our struggle every year. Is like everybody wants their bunkies right before May long weekend, and yet you need to find a way to make bunkies all winter and not go broke, and then not have a ton of bunkies in October, because no one wants a bunkie in November, December, January, February, at least in Canada. So a couple of ways we're trying to mitigate that whole supply wave is I'm just actually wrapping up a trade advisory program exporting course that I just took. So, how do we export to maybe a more southern climate where their season is our off season and vice versa? Just to smooth that out, I think will be hopefully successful. But yeah, in general, it's just a lot of kind of really thinking through the numbers, forecasting, and really knowing your numbers. So we know if we get about, let's just say, 1,000 people in the contest, we'll sell about one bunkie. That's a good kind of math formula that's been true ever since we started. And so we can work backwards from that. We also know we're going to sell about 50% of the bunkies we'll sell all year. We're going to sell them about around March 1st. So we know, okay, if we're here, then we're going to be there. So things like that. We just purchased a factory and we've started manufacturing ourselves so we can get everything under one roof. And there's challenges with that. So there's a lot of unknowns with manufacturing and building a physical product. But the good thing is that I really think that we're a little more recession proof in the sense that we do make a physical thing like that people do need. Whereas if you're kind of, selling something a little more intangible, it might get a little trickier when things get tight. So we're optimistic that we get the factory really humming by the end of this year, and then it'll be hopefully a smoother supply chain and smoother on the supply side.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'd like to come back for a moment to the book. So there may be other listeners out there who have a physical product business like you do, and perhaps are struggling to find out if or how to think about a book related to their business. So how would you suggest that they approach it if it's something that they're keen to pursue?
Yeah, well, 2 points. So to your question, at my scale, whatever our scale is, some people might consider us a small business, some people might think we're a big business. But when I started writing the book, we were a very small business. So I built the book for the bigger business, right? So if in your mind you have a bigger business in mind, I would say that, write the book for that business rather than the one that you may feel is a small business now. So that's my first spot. But yeah, I think that, okay, if you look at coaches and, the kind of less tangible, more intangible type services and products like digital products, there's probably a more proclivity to write the book. If you're like a coach and you don't have a book, you're kind of the weird one now, right? If you're a guru and you don't have at least 18 books, ideally a whole library of books behind you that you've written, in your garage with your sports car. If you don't have that, you're the outsider. Whereas if you're selling bunkies, you're going to be the only guy that has a book. If you're selling, if you're a plumber, for example, right? Everything I needed to know, I learned from, fixing toilets. This is just an example title. You're going to be the only plumber in probably your entire region that has a book, probably the entire country in some senses, right? I just think it's a great way to just instantly stick your hand up and stand out amongst your peers, especially if you're in a more physical, quote unquote, boring, physical thing. I just think it's a great way to just be I've put the effort into writing the book. I've written the definitive book of the pallet manufacturing industry, And you might think that you don't have a story to tell, but I guarantee some of those stories that you you share while you're shooting the crap with your local pallet manufacturing guys, people would read those stories and they would enjoy those stories, especially if you can tie in, why do people buy you? Why do they buy your service and your product? And tie the emotional reasons of that into your story. That's where it really, really hums.
Fantastic. So lastly, where should listeners go if they'd like to learn more about Bunkie Life and see if putting a bunkie on their property or at their cottage might make sense for them?
Yeah, so bunkielife.com is our website. If you want to go right into does it make sense for me? There's bunkielife.com/quiz. We've got a really easy 3-minute quiz that can kind of suss out, what's your understanding, what's your skill set, what's your lifestyle, kind of situations that may or may not make sense to do a bunkie if you want to kind of look in that way. But we've got other things like the book and a few other kind of more entry level things that you can get benefit from, whether or not the bunkie is actually in your future or not.
It's a bit counterintuitive to think that a publishing strategy can work in a product-based business. But is it really? Competitive strategy is about standing out, about being different, and what better way to do that than by literally writing the book on your product category? As we wrap up this episode of Entrepreneur to Author, remember this. The right book for your business may be very different than the right book for another business. That's why it's so important to go into it knowing your goals and how you'll use your book. While authorship is most common in service-based businesses, entrepreneurs who publish a book in the less obvious fields may stand out even more as the only one in their market who's a published author. And wherever you are with your business today, write your book for the business you envision in the future. Now is the time. Time to write, time to publish, and time to grow. I'm Scott McMillan. Until next time.